Hi, everyone. My name is Alaina G. Levine, and I'm president of Quantum Success Solutions. And I am really excited today to work with you to collaborate with MRS to present this webinar on how to land your dream job in academia. And what we're specifically going to be referring to and referencing today and addressing today is the marketing and the preparation. And this is a fantastic time to be thinking about this, not only because I know you want to land that dream job, and in academia, you want that faculty position, and you're thinking about it. It's, of course, the fall, it's autumn time. So right about now is when people are starting, universities are starting to really put out their advertisements and start doing heavy promotion in the academic job cycle to hopefully invite candidates, select candidates for interviews, and make job offers over the course of the next academic year so that the new faculty will be able to be on site next fall. Not only because it's the timing, because it is the autumn time, but also because MRS is premiering a new program. I'm going to tell you more about it in a bit, that I'm very excited and eager to share with you the details of. And I have a team with me today of panelists who are going to answer your questions about how to land your dream job in academia. And I want to take this time also, before I introduce the team, to thank the Materials Research Society. They are truly your partner for lifetime career resources. They are your career resource partner for all of your career needs, interests, goals, and objectives. And I just want you to always be thinking about MRS as the strategic collegiate colleague that is going to help you land your dream job. Whether it is in academia or in other ecosystems, MRS is your partner. And one of the things that MRS is doing is starting a new program that's going to help you. So on our panel today, and the way we're going to organize ourselves is I'm going to give say a few words about how to market yourself and start prepping yourself for this exciting opportunity that you have ahead of you to land your dream job, how to market yourself for your dream job in academia. And then we're going to have the chance, we're all going to have the chance to have a conversation with our amazing panel today, who are members of the MRS Early Career Professional Subcommittee. We have Tom Folland, who's a postdoc in mechanical engineering at Vanderbilt University. We have Babak Anasori, who's an assistant professor and the chair of the MRS Early Career Professional Subcommittee. Yes! He's in the Mechanical and Energy Engineering Department at Purdue School of Engineering and Technology at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. And we have Zach David Hood, who's also a postdoc in the Electrochemical Materials Lab at MIT. This team is going to be here to answer your questions about what they're doing in the MRS Early Career Professional Subcommittee to make a difference in terms of how you can advance and expand your career horizons. And they're going to specifically talk about how you can really land that academic career and land that dream job as a faculty member. Hey, Zach, I got a question for you. I hear there's this amazing MRS event, MRS program that you're launching this year, called the Meet Your New Faculty Candidate Poster Session. I am on the edge of my seat. Zach, can you tell us about this event?
Of course, yeah. So I'm Zach Hood here. Thanks, Alaina, for the great introduction. My name is Zach Hood, and I'm one of the organizers of this event, alongside Babak Anasori, Thomas Folland, and Pamela Hupp, as well as the rest of the MRS Early Career Professional Subcommittee. As you now know, the MRS is offering this new event called Meet Your New Faculty Candidate Poster Session, which will be offered at this upcoming MRS meeting. So why is this event important? This event is an exciting addition to this year's MRS meeting, where MRS early career professionals will have a chance to directly connect with search committees in this unique poster session. The intention of this event is to help early career professionals land their faculty dream job. Yes, your dream job, which is why we have this exciting webinar to help you prepare for this event. As the Early Careers Professionals Subcommittee, we want this event really to be a catalyst for your career development. The intention of this event is for you to gain exposure as a faculty candidate and use this event to reach out to the search committees such that you can network with these individuals directly at the upcoming MRS meeting. We had an incredible amount of interest in this event from our community. In fact, we had over 100 abstracts submitted this year, which is excellent. We're super excited. Additionally, we already have interest from a number of search committees who will attend this event. We will share this list with participants in early to mid-November via email, such that you can prepare to have positive interactions with these hiring departments. Again, we look forward to your participation in the Meet Your New Faculty Candidate poster session at this upcoming MRS meeting. And we really hope that this webinar really will provide some vital tips as you prepare really to land your faculty dream job. If there are any questions about this event, please use the question tabs on your webinar sidebar, and we will address any of these questions at the end of the webinar. At this point, I'll give the stage back to Alaina, and I want to thank all those who are participating in this webinar.
Thanks, Zach. And this is so interesting to me because I do a lot of work with STEM career development. I work with a lot of different organizations and universities too. And this is a very unique opportunity that MRS is offering grad students and postdocs and anybody that is on the faculty job market. So I really want to emphasize what the panel and what the team and also what the organization MRS is doing to really, for the audience here, to really take advantage of this very unique, invaluable opportunity where you get a chance to market yourself directly to the decision makers and the hiring managers in the search committees, the people who are looking to hire the next generation Nobel laureates in material science and engineering. This is your chance to actually speak directly to them and share with them your research philosophy, your research experience and expertise, what it is that you could provide that institution and that department and the colleagues in that department and that institution, and also what is your teaching philosophy and the type of teaching experience that you've had as well. We're going to talk more about this, but I just wanted to emphasize that for the audience. Really take advantage of this Meet Your New Faculty Candidate poster session, which is premiering at the fall meeting in Boston later this year. So our goals for today, for this webinar, I want to talk to you a little bit about how to build an effective marketing package for those academic jobs, how to get you ready for that Meet Your New Faculty Candidate event. And then, of course, I want to give you plenty of time to ask your questions, which you can do in the question console of your webinar dashboard, to talk to Babak and Tom and Zach about their experience and what they would advise you to do to get ready for the Meet Your New Faculty Candidate poster session, and also just in general, their advice about how you can better market yourself for the employment marketplace for faculty positions. So whenever we start a career plan, whenever we start a job getting, right? A job landing plan, right? Our goal is to land a job. We have to start with how we're going to communicate our value, to market ourselves. And marketing is not a dirty enterprise. I want to make that clear. Self-promotion is not a negative thing. Marketing in this regard, what I'm talking about when I say marketing and your marketing goals, is you need to make it clear to potential employers, to the search committee representatives, to the faculty that you're going to be engaging with, what your value is. In other words, what is it that you can do if you were to join their organization, if you were to join their department and their institution? What are you going to do to move the needle forward, to advance their agenda, to advance material science and engineering, your particular field and subfield and sub-subfield? They need to know this. They, quote unquote, anybody who is going to invest resources in you, meaning they're going to hire you, right? They're going to pay you money for a job. You need to be able to communicate what it is that you would provide them in exchange for that money. That's effective marketing. That's smart actions. These are things that we absolutely have to do. And make it no mistake, we are marketing, we are self-promoting ourselves every single day. After all, if you've given a poster at an MRS meeting, a fall or the spring meeting, or any other conference, or if you've given a talk at a conference or at a colloquium, you're marketing yourself. You're communicating what problems you've solved, what solutions you've come up with, and what the results and the ramifications are of those solutions. When you write a paper, You are marketing yourself. You're communicating what you've done to the community so they understand what you've done and how that could potentially impact their work. So, and even when you write a grant proposal, you're marketing yourself. You're telling the granting agency why they should invest money in you or in other types of resources in you. So we are already marketing. We are already promoting ourselves. And so it's not negative, it's actually positive, and it's absolutely essential if we are going to move forward in our career. Now, I am aware that the way we market ourselves individually, particularly for jobs and career development perspectives, I am aware that when we market ourselves in country X and in community Y, that could be very different in culture Z, in culture Y, in country X+1, and so forth. In other words, across the world, we communicate value, our value, in different ways. For example, I just came back from Denmark, where I was speaking for a group of material scientists and engineers, and we were talking about the fact that in Denmark, in Danish society, it's a very humble society. You wouldn't necessarily run up to somebody at a poster session and scream, "I'm awesome, you need to hire me for your department right now." You wouldn't do that. Of course, you wouldn't necessarily do that in the United States or another nation either, and you certainly wouldn't do that in the culture of the material science community worldwide. But it's a little bit quieter and it's a little bit more reserved in Denmark in terms of how you market yourself. Similarly in India, similarly in China. So understanding the culture that you're going to work in is very important for you to develop a customized marketing strategy for yourself, for you to land that academic dream job. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. So going back to our marketing goals, we're trying to communicate our value. I'm going to tell you more about what that value is in a moment, but we have to know what our value is, first of all, and we also have to know what the potential employer values. So depending on the type of institution, and we're going to talk more about that as well in just a few moments, depending on the different type of institution, you know, they could value teaching more than research. They could have a high value on diversity and innovation and diversity and inclusion as it relates to innovation. And so being able to understand what your potential employer values and what you value and what your value is so important, because this is the goal. This is the equation. We need to be able to communicate how we are uniquely qualified to deliver our value to this institution, and then demonstrate the alignment between your own value and values and that of the employer. So obviously you have a great passion for research and innovation in material science and engineering, and you have a great dedication to teaching, and you have a great passion and dedication to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And these are going to be values that are of importance to certain institutions. And like I said, depending on the institution, more so for some, less so for others. And so to be able to showcase in your marketing materials, in your CV, in your cover letter, in your research and teaching and diversity statements, that you have these values and that you share the values of the institution, and that you see an alignment, you see a connection, you see parallels. You can even use that phrase, I see parallels between my own interests, goals, and values and that of your department, that of your institution, and this is how I see that. And by demonstrating that, by actually articulating that, you're giving yourself a competitive advantage. Because remember, no matter what type of job it is, but in particular, since we're talking about academic career paths, the job search process is never about what you, the job seeker, can get from me, the search committee. It's what you, the job seeker, can do for me, the search committee, for me, the department, for me, the university or the institution. And so that is, I think, what is a big challenge for a lot of early career scientists and engineers, is making that framework shift in their mind between what am I trying to get? I'm trying to get a job. You got to shift that out of your mind and instead think about, what can I offer this department? What can I offer this institution? And when you make that shift in your mind, the language that you use to describe your value and your values and your experience and your expertise and your knowledge base becomes so much clearer for the reader so that they know why they should invite you in for an interview. Because I want to hear, as a search committee member, I want to hear more about what you can do for me. And I want to hear more. I do want to hear about you. I want to hear about your experience and your expertise and your knowledge, but I want to hear it in the context of me. I want to hear it in the context of what you are going to do for me. So remember that. Now, it's also important to remember the purpose of any job in any type of organization, including academia, and I use the word company there purposely to refer to academia because even academia is a company, right? Of course, there's products, that's the degree, there's customers, those are the students, but what is the purpose of any job in any company, in any organization, in any industry, in any part of the known universe? And this is important for you to remember because this is going to be the cornerstone of all of your marketing, all of your communications. When you are at the Meet Your New Faculty Candidate poster session, you are going to be communicating this, and that is that you are going to be solving problems. I'm hiring you to solve problems in my organization. So in my organization, for the purposes of this webinar, my organization is an academic institution, an institution of higher learning. So what are the problems of academia? These are the 4 problems of academia, or as I like to call them, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. These are the 4 problems that you need to be thinking about that you have solved in the past, what you would solve in what you've been solving in the present, and how the present and the past solutions that you've come up with and the experience you have in solving these types of problems in the past and the present will help you solve those problems in the future for my department and my institution. And I'm smiling when I'm saying this because I'm so excited. If you think about it in this way, it actually also gives you a huge competitive advantage. And honestly, writing research statements, writing teaching statements, or writing cover letters are annoying. They are so annoying. Let's be honest here. I can be honest with you guys, right? This is MRS. You're a cool group. You're a cool bunch of guys and gals. Well, you know what? I'm going to be super honest. Writing these letters, writing these research and teaching statements, they are so annoying. So we want to reduce the annoyance on you, the writer. And so the way you can reduce the annoyance is developing a template for yourself, developing an outline for yourself so that when you're writing your customized statements, because everything has to be customized, as I will detail more in a few moments, when you're writing your customized statements, you already have an outline prepped, so it makes it easier. And you already have your language that you're using prepped. And the language that you're using that you want to prepare in advance is, I have solved research experience problems. I have solved teaching problems. I have solved service problems, and I have solved fundraising problems, right? I have raised money, I have grants, and I can demonstrate that I've gotten fellowships and things of that nature. So if you can communicate how you have solved the 4 problems of academia: research, teaching, service, and fundraising. Because after all, when I hire you as a faculty member in my department, those are the 4 areas, those are the 4 problems you will be solving. And everything else just sort of falls underneath all of those, including mentoring. If you can demonstrate that in your marketing materials, then what's going to happen is I'm going to easily see how you would fit into my department, and I'm going to want to invite you for an interview. And this is an important point to emphasize here, that all of these marketing materials, your CVs, your cover letters, and so forth, and your statements, all of these things serve as the way for me as a search committee member to be introduced to your brand, your promise of value, to encourage me to invite you for an interview. So the CV package gets you the interview. It's the interview that gets you the job. So I just wanted to make that clear. So let's talk about how you're valuable. Do you mind if I take a few moments to tell you how amazing and awesome you are as material science and engineering gods and goddesses of this universe and every other universe in the universe? I hope that's okay for me to take this moment, because there's a lot more that you're valuable in besides your expertise and knowledge base in material science and engineering and your subfield and your sub-subfield and so forth. You actually have a lot more experience and skills. And the reason I mention this is because you want to distinguish yourself from the other members of the community who are applying for the same academic jobs, right? And so everybody else, when they submit their CV packets, when they submit their application packets for academic positions, they are simply writing, I am a talented materials scientist in metamaterials. I am an expert in X. I am an expert in Y. This is what I do. You being a god and goddess, you're going to do it a little bit differently. You are going to talk about the fact that you are an expert in metamaterials or phononics or topological acoustics or anything else that you're an expert in. You're going to talk about it in the context of what you can do for me, for my department and my organization and my university, but you're also going to talk about the other skills that you have that would help you be successful as a scientist or an engineer in this university, as a researcher in this institution. This is what I want you to be aware of. What are some of the other value? What is some of the other value and skills that you have as material scientists and engineers that are relevant to academia and could be useful for you to actually share in your marketing documents and even when you're doing your interview? Well, certainly you obviously are an excellent problem solver. That's a natural action of being a material scientist and engineer. But that problem solving ability actually applies to other types of problems. In other words, you can take your expertise in X and apply it to problems in Y. I myself have an undergraduate degree in mathematics, and I've noticed that having studied mathematics, it helps me be successful in communications, it helps me be successful in public speaking, in writing, it even helps me be successful in comedy occasionally. But the idea is that I can take my abilities of problem solving in mathematics, in the realm of mathematics, and apply it to problems in other realms. And that is very unique to science, that allows you, and engineering, in the fact that you gain these skills and problem solving in science and engineering, and you can apply it to other realms, which is useful for you if you were specifically applying for a position, for example, in a department that is not a material science and engineering department. So let's say you are going for a job in a chemistry department or a physics department or a mathematics department, or maybe your work has relevance to aerospace engineering or systems engineering or manufacturing or chemical engineering or whatever. To be able to say that your expertise in material science and engineering would be valuable to this department, that you'd be able to solve problems in aerospace and electrical engineering, for example, because of your ability over here in MCE, that you can apply it to this other realm, that is going to be a really good action for you to take to actually communicate that. So in addition to being these really great problem solvers, and these problem solvers that can move and shift across ecosystems and domains, you also are very adaptive and adaptable and flexible. You have critical thinking and analysis skills. I know that you have a very disciplined approach to solving problems. Obviously you do, because you have a PhD and material science and engineering, the hardest subject known to humankind. Let's be honest about that. So you have this discipline. I know you're self-disciplined, you're self-motivated. You probably have really, really good computing skills. You certainly have great technology skills. You can solve a problem from the ground up. You don't accept things for the way they are. You take both the mountaintop view of problem solving, looking at all of the system, and you also take a granular view. And you can potentially do that at the same time. You can also potentially solve problems in multiple dimensions. Again, that's something that I see in myself, having studied mathematics. It really helped me to be able to solve problems in multiple dimensions and see the system and the details at the same time. Very, very useful. I'm sure you have that as well. And you also understand how the physical world works. And here's something great, and something that a lot of scientists and engineers don't think to communicate in their marketing materials for their job, for the job application process, is the fact that you do have project management and teamwork and probably leadership experience, particularly if you've led projects and designed projects yourself. And they are probably large scale, diverse across continents, so you are used to working on an international team. You know, one of the really wonderful things about MRS, and in particular the MRS meetings, I love going to the MRS meetings because when I do that, I am interacting with people literally from almost every country on the planet. It is really amazing and truly unique, let's be clear about this, about how the nature of science and engineering is, that it is an international endeavor. And so you probably have been collaborating with colleagues from multiple nations, multiple cultures around the world. This is very valuable. This is invaluable because it shows me, if you've been interacting and if you've worked on multiple contents in multiple countries, it shows me that you are flexible, that you are adaptable, that you are adaptive, that you can quickly jump in and join a team that is multicultural, multi-international, and potentially multidisciplinary, because of course material science and engineering tends to be that way anyway, and you can be successful. You can produce outputs which are creative and important. So this is something that you should not take lightly, but it's something you should actually think about for yourself, that you have the nature of it, and think about even communicating it in your cover letter and potentially even in your research statement, and even in your CV if it's appropriate. You related to this, of course, you have access to huge networks, and then you know that your work has everyday applications. Now, beyond the science, right, you also have a lot of business skills. These are actual business skills that you have gained from being a material science and engineering early career professional. So even if you are in grad school, even if you are in a postdoc, you will have been developing excellent oral and written communications, right? From writing those papers, from giving those talks, from giving those posters, from giving those colloquia. You have been developing leadership and team building experience. If you have a PI, you have conflict resolution experience. Am I right, or am I right, or am I right? You know, you have experience in managing projects and people and facilities and money. You, if you've been on a grant, or if you've designed a budget, even if it's a small budget for your particular piece of your research group or your lab, you may have some accounting and finance experience. If you mentored somebody or trained somebody on a piece of equipment or a technique, you have human resources and training experience. If you've bought facilities for your lab, that's procurement and inventory. Again, if you have a PI, you have risk management experience. But of course, there's risk management and risk assessment associated with doing any type of scientific experiment. So you have that as well. And the sales and marketing comes in from writing those grant proposals, public relations and event management. Maybe you organized a colloquium, or maybe you organized a special event or a professional development event for postdocs, or maybe you served on a committee. That's event management, the customer relations, interacting with whoever is investing in you, and then the grant writing. So I mentioned these skills for you to be aware of, so that you will make sure to highlight them in your cover letter, in your CV, in your statements, and of course then in your interview, so that you are giving yourself a competitive advantage, because the other scientists and engineers who are applying for the same jobs as you in academia are not mentioning that they have these other skills. They are only talking about the science. Talk about the science and talk about these other business skills, which help you be a better scientist and engineer, which help you be a better, stronger, more agile faculty member in this institution. Give yourself that competitive advantage. Now, of course, I mentioned customization. When we are applying for these faculty positions, when we're marketing ourselves for these academic roles, we need to be aware that there are many different types of institutions, right? There are the Research One institutions, which are very, very focused on research and have a lot of money that they gain from grants and from other types of sources to fund research. There's Research Two institutions. There are smaller research-focused universities. There might be public in universities, like my alma mater is the University of Arizona. That's a public institution in the state of Arizona in the United States. But there are also private universities. There's private colleges, which could be smaller, whereas the University of Arizona has, I think, 30 to 35,000 students, maybe even more. There are private liberal arts or private colleges that have just a few thousand, if that many, students on their campus, and they might not give graduate degrees. They may just be focused on undergraduate. But because they're focused on undergraduate, and this is something you would research to find out the nature of the institution that you're applying for a job at, you know, if it was College X, a liberal arts college, they may be very focused on getting their students into graduate school. So even if it's a smaller college that doesn't give out graduate degrees, they may want their faculty to be very high-level researchers, to have the publications, to have the presentations, to have the experience in grant funding, and most importantly, have the experience in mentoring undergraduate students to help them get to the next step in their research-intensive career, which is graduate school. So knowing that type of thing would be very useful for you, because then as you're writing your application packets for that liberal arts college, or that small community, that small college, you would be able to showcase how your values, right, as a researcher, as a scientist, as an engineer, as a teacher, and your value as all of those align with that particular liberal arts institution. There could be also other small local colleges. I didn't mention community colleges because you're not often finding tenure track faculty positions there, but there are, of course, faculty positions in community colleges too. And like I said earlier, just as the culture of marketing yourself differs across the world, the culture of institutions and how you apply for jobs at institutions and how they're organized differs throughout the world as well. So you want to do your due diligence from a local perspective and understand, of course, that every institution has its own values. Very important for you to identify. And quite honestly, most universities, most institutions of higher education around the world, on their main page, on their website, where it says about, will list out their values. They may even actually write out our university's values are. And to be able to look at what those values are and then reference those values using that language, using those words in your cover letter, in your application packet, that's also going to give you a competitive advantage. Because I can guarantee you that the majority of the scientists and engineers who are applying for faculty positions do not do that. They generally just focus their time in terms of researching the institution on looking at the department's website and understanding what the department does. And don't get me wrong, that's important too. Of course, you're going to be joining that department as a colleague, but you also have to understand how that department operates in the greater context of the institution. And no better place is there to start than looking at the About page on the institution's main website, where they list out their values, their mission, where they talk about what's important. You could even read their strategic plan, all very, very helpful to you. So now you want to think about, why would these particular institutions that you're applying for, why would they want you? So what can you offer me? Well, I'm a search committee member. Maybe I see you at the Meet Your New Faculty Member poster session, Meet Your New Faculty Candidate poster session at the MRS Fall meeting. What would you be able to provide to me? So you have a lot of value, right? Your focus on helping the institution succeed and advance is the #1 thing, right? So you want to help me be successful. You bring with you your scientific and engineering know-how, experience, and your record, right? Your record of publishing, of contributing to the community of science and engineering, in material science and engineering. You bring a passion for advancing the field and subfield, for really advancing it to the next frontier. You bring an ability to work both independently, because you're going to have to do that as a faculty member, but also collaboratively, because you are going to be working on teams. You're going to be working on teams with other faculty in your department, out of your department. You're going to be working on teams with students, with postdocs, with colleagues perhaps from industry, depending on the nature of your work. And of course, you'll be working on teams across the world. You bring an interdisciplinary and global network with you. You bring a management and leadership experience that helps me understand that you'd be able to solve problems in research and teaching and outreach and fundraising because you have this experience. You bring its operations experience. You bring teaching and mentorship dedication and experience. You bring a record of fundraising, and you bring a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very important to not forget about that piece. In fact, particularly in the United States right now, it's becoming more and more common for faculty jobs, job advertisements, for the requirements of those jobs, for them to ask you, the job candidate, to actually write a statement devoted to diversity, equity, inclusion. We'll talk about that shortly. So now you've heard what would these institutions why would these institutions want you, right? So why are you amazing? And now let's talk about, what do you want? What do you want from me, from my institution? Because I want to make sure, if I am hiring you, I want to make sure that you actually are getting what you need from me too. Because what we're building when I hire you, what we're building is a long-term win-win collaboration, a long-term mutually beneficial partnership where we're both going to be providing value to each other over time. The value that you're going to be providing to me is from that other screen, all of those different things. And now I want to find out what I would be providing for you. And this is something you want to be thinking about. And this will be customized, and this will be, there'll be more specificity added depending on who you are, depending on what you want actually from an institution. You know, I mentioned, for example, a shared sense of values, the ability to act creatively, the opportunity to advance your career in your field, the opportunity to be innovative, both from a reactive perspective, as if a colleague comes to you and says, what if we did X, to a proactive perspective where you approach the colleague or you approach the department and say, I think we should apply for this grant, this collaborative interdisciplinary grant. So all these things are things that you could potentially get from me, right? What you would want from my institution. But there might be other things that you want or even need from your institution. And they can be very personal, right? So it could be an issue associated with flexibility, where maybe you have a kid, okay, or a puppy, or in my case, a cactus, because I live in Arizona, and you have to take care of that kid, puppy, or cactus, and you want to devote time to that kid, puppy, or cactus. You know, in all of those cases, you want to make sure, does the institution support that? That would be something that you might want or need from the institution. You may want or need an institution to be connected to industry, to have a record of very strong, robust ties with different industry partners because of the nature of your work and because of what you want to do in the future. So it's very useful for you to actually make a list for yourself of what you want from an institution and be very granular about it, and what you need from an institution and be also very granular. And think about the different partitions and the different pieces of the institution. What do you want and need from the department? What do you want and need from your division, your field within the department? What do you want and need from the whole institution? What do you want and need from the college or the faculty of science or the faculty of engineering, depending on where you're going to be? These are all really, really helpful. Knowing that certain institutions focus on some of these aspects more than others will help you decide what is the right institution and what is the right job for you. It'll give you that information. So now let's go get you that job, shall we? Shall we spend the time to go get you that job? I think that's a great idea. Okay, so we need to collect, organize, develop, edit, fine-tune again, customize, fine-tune some more your marketing material. So what are you going to be putting together now? And I say now with a huge exclamation point, maybe even like 7 exclamation points, because we want to plan way in advance so that when the job opportunity comes up, you don't have to scramble, you don't have to work and pull an all-nighter. You'll already have most of these materials ready to go. You will customize them, of course, but you'll have templates ready to go so you can just customize it, and you will be done within, you know, just a few days, as opposed to having to start from scratch. So your materials, your marketing materials that are most important in landing your dream job in academia, of course, your CV, right? Because that's going to describe your record. I'm going to tell you more about what should be on the CV. You are going to also need a cover letter for each job, and you're going to change that cover letter for every single job. You're going to need a research statement. You're going to need a teaching statement. Depending on where you're applying, you might and probably will more in the future need a diversity statement. And by the way, I'm going to go over all of these in just a moment. You will need letters of recommendation and references. So let me take a moment just to talk about that, because what you want to do is, in advance of knowing that you're going to go on the job market, you know, a year in advance, and I'm going to give you a timeline too, excuse me. You want to start reaching out to your trusted, and that's the key word, trusted contacts, your mentors, your trusted PI, your trusted PhD and master's advisor, your trusted mentor from even your undergraduate days, or your trusted mentor from another institution with whom you collaborated, and ask them if they would consider writing letters of recommendation. And you could even ask them, if they're busy, you don't mind writing the first draft so that at least they have something to work with. You could also offer them to send them your CV, excuse me, your CV and your research statement, but you could also just offer to send them just a general list, or not a general list, but just a bulleted list of some of the highlights that you would like them to discuss, or some of the highlights that they experienced when they interacted with you, so that they remember why you are truly amazing. Because what we're going for with these letters of recommendations are glowing letters. We want people to write, this person is amazing. They are talented. They are smart. They are creative. The work they do in material science is just truly extraordinary and is going to be a game changer. truthfully. We don't want anybody to embellish. We want them to be truthful about it, but we want them to tell the full truth and the whole truth and nothing but that. And the thing is that what we don't want are lukewarm letters of recommendation. I knew this person 10 years ago. She was the best person in my class. Love, Alaina. That's not a good letter of recommendation. It needs to go into detail about what I observed about you. It needs to go into detail about how I saw you develop as a scientist or an engineer, how I saw you approach research problems, and why you would be a good fit for that institution. So the letters of recommendation also have to be customized a bit as well. And so that's why you want to give your letter writers plenty of time in advance for them to be aware of of the application deadline, and also plenty of time for them to be aware that you are going to be on the job market. And related to what you would send the letter writers, you would also send them a copy of the job application, so that and information about the institution, so that they see who you're applying to, where you're applying to, and if maybe they even know people, they might even be able to get you on the short list. So you also want to update your LinkedIn profile, your ResearchGate profile, and any other social media sites profiles that would be relevant, meaning anything that's public, right? Because they're going to be doing searches, they're going to be looking for you. So let's talk about the different pieces of your marketing package. Okay, so you're in your CV, you start with a headline and an executive summary. So, and by the way, I want to make this offer this invitation to anybody who's listening to this webinar. I'm happy to send you a CV template and a resume template if you email me. And my email address will be at the end, but it's alaina@alainalevine.com. And just write MRS webinar template, please, and I will send it to you for free. It's not a problem. And you'll get a chance to look at the CV template in detail. And this is where I'm drawing this from. So the CV should have a headline which describes, and you can actually call the headline research interest or research expertise, depending on your comfort level, where you describe some of your areas of expertise or some of the subfields that you're knowledgeable about. You could also describe the techniques. And what it is it's a quick way for me when I'm looking at your CV, I quickly see, she's an expert in metamaterials and X. He's an expert in Z and Z+1, and then I read on. So it's really just a wonderful way to just introduce why you would be of value to that department. You also want to include an executive summary, and the executive summary could be in bullet form, or it could be in paragraph form, and it could describe, like, over 10 years researching X and Y, over 15 years using techniques relating to A, B, and C, have taught 7 courses, including undergraduate and graduate courses and lab courses. So it's sort of like summary statements about your value, have raised over, 10 million euro in grant funds in the last 2 years, have won 2 Nobel Prizes, the chemistry one and the economic sciences one, because you are amazing, right? So you've won both of them. But the idea is just give me a summary of your value right up at the top. Then we're going to list our education in reverse chronological order. We're going to list the appointments in reverse chronological order. So, right, our current appointment right now is probably either a postdoctoral associate or a postdoctoral fellow in Department X at University Y, or it could be graduate research associate or research assistant or graduate student in Department X in University Y. Then we're going to have a section called Research Experience. And in the Research Experience section, we're going to take each of the different, you can separate them either by projects that you've done, research projects, or by the actual job that you had. And I'm using the word job here in quotes. A job in this regard, under the Research Experience section, is when you did the research, right? So like your postdoc is job 1, and your research assistantship as a graduate student is job 2, and your master's thesis might be job 3, and you might have done another project as an undergrad or as a graduate student. So those are the 4 jobs that you would list under your research experience, and then you would describe what I call the macro problem, right? For your PhD, that's your dissertation topic, and then you describe the micro problem solution result of, so those are the micro problems are what you solved on a day-to-day, week-to-week, and month-to-month basis. So those are your accomplishments, that I use this technique to be able to see X, that I retooled or redesigned this particular type of equipment to be able to do A, or I trained students on Z, and it led to a first author paper in Nature. It led to us better understanding the nature of metamaterials in this ecosystem. It led to us getting 2 Nobel Prizes. If you can quantify your result, right? It increased the efficiency by 50% or decreased the cost by 50%. Or led to two first author papers, or led to X amount of money. Quantification really helps me better understand very quickly what your result is and how you solve problems. So you also want to have a section called teaching experience, where you break down some of the different courses that you've taught and talk about also what are some of the teaching methods you used or the teaching problems that you solved, right? So as a teacher, as a TA, you might have designed lectures, you might have delivered lectures, you could have designed the curriculum, you could have led the labs, you could have graded the labs. There's many different things you could have done, and you could have engaged with multiple pedagogical methods, the flipping of the classroom, using technology in classrooms, excuse me, different ways of teaching. And so to be able to say that, to list those out, would be very important here. I want to just step out of this slide for just a moment to tell you something important, which a lot of people ask me. Can you repeat things on your CV? And can you repeat things on your CV that are in your research statement or your teaching statement? And the answer is yes, 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 or in German, ja, ja, ja. And the reason I say that is because you want to be sharing your value in multiple places in your application packet, because you don't know what people are going to be reading. The search committee, ideally they would read everything in your packet, but the more data points that you can give them, that I have this teaching experience, you mentioned it in the teaching experience section of your CV. I have this teaching experience, you mentioned it in your cover letter. I have this teaching experience, you mentioned it in your teaching statement. The more likely I'm going to remember that you have that unique experience. It's going to be cemented in my brain, and I'm going to be thinking about you as a knowledge-based professional, somebody who has this knowledge base and has this unique experience and this unique value for me, for my department. So yes, you can repeat things across the packet, and you can even repeat things in the CV itself. For example, in your education, you might mention that you got a graduate fellowship to get your PhD. Well, you could also mention that in the awards and fellowship section of your CV. I do that myself. I had a fellowship to study abroad in Cairo as an undergraduate. I list the study abroad and the fellowship under my education on my resume and CV, and then in my awards section, I also list it as well. So totally fine to double dip. In fact, that's a strategic, useful measure that you can take. Back to the webinar. Of course, you're also going to be mentioning and listing out your publications and your presentations. A side note about this also is that when you deliver your CV packet, sometimes the publications and the presentations list becomes its own document, and sometimes it's folded within the CV. That's a personal choice, potentially, or if the university specifies, we need your CV, we need a publications list, we need X, we need Y, the publications list, the presentations becomes a separate document. So we're going to list out your pubs in reverse chronological order with numbers, so I see how many you have. You could even have a summary statement over 50 first author papers. That would be awesome. I would love to talk to you if you have that as a graduate student, or over five papers as a graduate student and a postdoc. You could even talk about your H index if you wanted to. And then I would bold your name in the list of authors so that I can quickly see where you are. Same thing with presentations. And with presentations, I would qualify them by saying this is an invited talk, this was a poster, this was an oral talk. And any talk you gave is fair game to list in your presentations. So that includes, of course, talks that you give at the MRS Fall and Spring meeting and posters that you give at the Fall and Spring meeting for MRS. But it also includes colloquia, it includes talks that you gave to the MRS chapter at your university. It includes public talks, and you could even say public talk if you wanted to. So you'll also have an awards and honors section. You'll have a grants section. And don't worry, by the way, if you haven't received a lot of grants, or even if you haven't received a single grant at this point in your career. That's okay. You're early in your career. Just list out the things that you do have. And if there is any way as a student or a postdoc for you to build capacity so that you can demonstrate that you have experience in raising money, even if it's small amounts of money for a short, like a very small piece of a project, or to mentor a student, or as a member or leader in your MRS chapter, that is going to be something that you can share. And in addition, on your CV, you will list out those skills like the ones that I listed before, the science and engineering skills, and of course the mentoring, management, and teaching skills. You will probably also have an outreach and service section on your CV and a leadership section too. Your cover letter, you're going to think, what was the problem, solution, result, and spin back. So what I mean by that is, in the cover letter, which is usually 1 to 2 pages maximum, do not write a thesis for your cover letter. You're going to break down each paragraph, separate each paragraph into one unique problem. So for example, after you have your introductory paragraph, paragraph 2 becomes devoted to research. So you're going to talk about some of the research problems you've solved, some of the solutions you've come up with, some of the results of the solutions, and this is the customization. I call it the spin back because it brings it back to me, a member of the search committee at that institution. Talk about how you solving this research problem with metamaterials gave you this experience, which will allow you to be a successful team member in my department, because you know that my department is really trying to advance its work in metamaterials. Or you saw that my department is doing a lot more collaboration with the chemistry department on campus, and you have a chemistry background as well as an MSc background, and that is something that would be able to add value. So you're bringing it back to me, you're showcasing what it is that you did, how what you did will help me in the future. So you're thinking what in the past you've done and what in the present you're doing will help me in the future. So talk about the institution's unique faculty, the facilities, the values, the reputation, but talk about yourself in the context of their needs. So each paragraph is devoted to a unique problem set. So one problem set is the research problems, one problem set is the teaching problems, one problem set might be outreach or service or diversity, depending on the values of the institution. The research statement, there are many ways to do this. It's an art, not a science. Same thing with your CV. It's an art, not a science. And by the way, the CV template I'm sending you is just a general CV template, but depending on what nation you're applying for a job in, that CV is going to change. For many European nations, for example, when you apply for an academic position, your CV has your photograph on it, it has your date of birth, it has your nationality. In the United States, you include none of those things. Absolutely none of those things are included in your CV when you're applying for an academic position in the US. So to know that is very, very useful. Same thing with the research statement. This is going to change depending on where you are and also depending on your own personal way of communicating. So you could organize your research statement by project. So project 1, project 2, you could organize it by subfield. You could organize it chronologically. It could be a combination of bullets and prose. It could be mostly bullets, but bullets that have prose and paragraphs in them. There's no one way to do this. But I would play around with different ways that make you comfortable in communicating what it is that you can do for an organization, for a department. But the key is, here are the keys. Number 1, you want to identify the key research problems that you'd like to solve and how your past and present experience will help you be successful solving these in the future. This, of course, is going to be aligned with what the institution holds dear, what it considers to be valuable. You want to discuss your specific, you need to be specific, your specific goals with details of working at that institution. So I want to come to your institution because of your work at the forefront of phononics and topological acoustics. This is something that I find very passionate about. This is something I've been working on. This is what I have worked on in the past. This is what I'm working on right now. And this is why I want to work with you in the future, because of the fact that you are investing heavily in phononics and topological acoustics, because of the fact that you are collaborating across departments to create interdisciplinary teams, to cut down silos and really encourage innovation and creativity in this space. This is why I want to work here. And discussing your specific goals of doing topological acoustics research and how you're going to do that related to the institution, right? Related to the institution's facilities and faculty and everything that they have at their disposal, all the resources, that's going to give you a competitive advantage. Show me how you will fit in and move my agenda forward. And you can even discuss any grants or fundraising experience that you have as well. So this is what goes into the research statement. The length depends. I've seen research statements that are 1 page. That might be a little too short, but 2 to 3 pages tends to be a typical research statement length. So you could go with that. Teaching statements, similar length. You could go to 2 to 3 pages. I'd keep that on the shorter end if you can. Similar types of structure to the research statement, an organization, and also similar types of things that you want to communicate. You want to communicate what it is that you've done in the past as far as teaching and present, and how that would enable you to be successful as a teacher in the future. You want to talk about what you've done in the past and present as a teacher and how that relates to you being a successful teacher in my institution in the future. You want to talk about your teaching philosophy and how this is aligned with my institution. You want to talk about and get into some detail about your teaching experience, the courses, the subjects, the levels, the pedagogical methods, your goals of teaching at my institution. Be specific. For example, maybe my institution is very focused on, for example, very focused on undergraduate students from diverse populations. And this is something that is very important to you. It's of great value to you. It's a value that you hold dear. And so to be able to talk to me about how you have developed mentoring programs for students from diverse populations or underrepresented minorities in science, you've developed mentoring programs and really reached out to make sure that every voice is heard and every student has access to the highest level of material science and engineering resources so they can be amazing material science and engineering gods and goddesses themselves. This is going to be very useful for you to share. So you can also talk about, and this is so important, why you love teaching, especially if teaching is important in the job, and is going to be for any job, but in particular for teaching intensive faculty positions. Talk about why you absolutely are passionate about teaching. This is so important in the teaching statement because I need to know that you're not just applying to my department because you're applying for 60 other departments because you are desperate for a job anywhere that you can get a faculty position. I need to know that you are really interested in me, my department, my university, me specifically. And so if my university is focused on teaching, if my college is focused on teaching, then you need to tell me why you love teaching and why you see parallels between your own teaching goals and experience and values and my teaching goals and values and experience. And related to that, of course, you can include your mentoring experience as well. I mentioned the diversity statement. So more and more in the United States, as I referenced, we're seeing a request and a requirement for a diversity statement in the job application packet. So what this is how do you view the role of diversity, equity, and inclusion in your research and teaching? What is the alignment between your own philosophy of teaching and research and service and that of the institution as it relates to a diversity lens? And how can you ensure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is interwoven into everything that you do, past, present, and future? So you really need to think about the connection between diversity and innovation in MSc and in an institution of higher learning, and why it is so important for everyone to have access to all of these things, to all of the resources to be successful in science and engineering. That's part of the diversity statement. You're also going to be networking, and of course, the Meet Your New Faculty Candidate poster session at the MRS Fall Meeting is a great opportunity to do that. You want to network because you want to learn about new opportunities and hidden opportunities. Make sure that your brand or your promise of value is at the forefront of the search committee members' minds. You want to get on that search list. Ideally, you want to be invited to apply, which happens a lot, and you want to constantly demonstrate that you are uniquely qualified to solve their problems and that your values, goals, and interests mirror that of the goal institution. So that's what you're going to be thinking about. So when you're networking, you can network through MRS. You can find people through the MRS directory, through the committees, at the conferences, of course, like the fall meeting and the spring meeting. It's a great opportunity to meet people at the Meet Your New Faculty Candidate poster session, through colleagues and peers and advisors. Who do you know at this institution? Do you have any alums that work for this department? Talk to people, let them know you're on the job market and see who they know. Most people within the community are very happy to share their networks with other people who are coming up the ladder. You can use LinkedIn and other social media, and even through your own alumni networks, you can use that to advance, to network. And just be aware that you're also going to be engaging in a lot of self-promotion, which is totally appropriate when you're networking, to build those win-win alliances to make sure that your brand, your promise of value is fresh in the minds of the decision makers. Offer to give a colloquium in different departments when you're traveling. Offer to do a Skype or a Zoom conversation with groups. Ask for casual conversations with department heads, deans, group leaders, so that they can get to know you and you can get to know them. Certainly volunteer for MRS committees, because then other faculty and other decision makers and leaders in MSc are seeing you in action, and they're getting a sense of your value and what you would do for their department. Volunteer to mentor and apply for awards and sit on awards committees and other types of committees, and develop relationships with journalists so that your research outputs get out there into the media. And then the plan and the timeline. So our timeline is very crucial. So for our case study, I thought, okay, I'm looking for a job. I'm going to be graduating in May, or I'm going to finish my postdoc in May of 2021. So if that's the case, that's 2 years from now. Starting in January, between January and June of 2020, I want to make sure that I'm researching institutions that I might want to work for. I want to engage in high impact networking, where I'm having a lot of casual conversations with those deans, department heads, faculty members, to learn more about departments and needs in those departments and institutions. I want to begin my marketing. I want to engage in those self-promotion activities like giving colloquia in different departments. I want to start preparing my application materials and getting your letters of recommendation in order. By June, a year before you actually will apply, by June, you should start to fine-tune your marketing materials. That's when you develop your own personal templates for these different institutions and these different types of institutions. And then in the fall, of course, is when you would start applying for those positions and contact anybody that you know from those departments that you've been networking with over the last 9 or more months, to let them know that you're going to be applying for that job, and maybe having another conversation with them so you can learn more specifics about that position. That's where the networking comes in really handy. So important factors to just summarize: customize, customize, customize. You will have some templates for yourself, but you do actually have to connect the dots for the search committees. If you do not discuss their specific facilities, their specific capabilities, the specific faculty, what it is about that department that really drives you and really motivates you, and really where you see the alignment, you're going to potentially not be invited for an interview. Excuse me. So use their language, talk about your value in terms of problem, solution, result, and that spin back, that customization. That's really going to make a huge difference. I had a client once, because I do career consulting, who had applied. He was a postdoc in chemistry, and he had applied for 60 faculty positions, and he had not gotten a single interview. And when you don't get a single interview, we know that, we look at the data, we know that the data point that's the problem is the marketing materials. So it's not anything else, it's the way he was marketing himself that was encouraging people not to invite him for interviews. So I said, great, this is useful information for us to have, we can work with this. And I said, can you send me your cover letters, multiple cover letters, so I can review them? And he said, what cover letters? I have one single cover letter. And he did. It was one letter. The only thing he changed in every single version of that letter, was the name of the university. He changed nothing else. He didn't customize it whatsoever. And I got to tell you, that was the main reason why he was not getting interviews. If I have a unique facility, if I have a core facility that does X in my institution that directly relates to what you want to do and what you've done in the past, please mention that. That will give you a huge competitive advantage, not like this other guy. So with that, I wanted to remind you to log into My MRS to opt in to receive lots and lots and lots of career-related information from our MRS. You have to log into My MRS to opt in to get that. And now I want to bring back our amazing team, because now it's your time to answer questions and to ask, well, you're not going to answer questions, the audience, but my colleagues, Tom, Babak, and Zach, are going to answer your questions about how you can get ready for the Meet Your New Faculty Candidate poster session, and how you could potentially advance your career and land those faculty dream jobs. You guys ready? I'm so psyched.
Yeah, I think we're all ready.
Yeah, we're ready.
Fantastic.
Cool. So I was going to separate the questions into 2 separate sectors, like career related questions for attaining the faculty job, which kind of follows off of your awesome presentation. And then also then next we'll go into poster related questions for like the actual event. So for the first question that we have is actually coming from Ahmed. And he says that he's currently a postdoc at a national lab, and he has another postdoc lab lined up again in a national lab during which he will be applying for faculty positions. So I'm sure he'll be applying in the coming years. But the national labs don't have many teaching programs, and he wanted to know if his teaching experience would be a problem or if it would be a disadvantage for his faculty application.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that.
Yep, so I can answer. This is Babak speaking. So, well, there are many things that you need to have in your teaching statement. You can develop it even now. And the first one is it starts with teaching philosophy. It doesn't matter whether you have experience or not in teaching a class or course. You can think about your teaching philosophy and start developing it. You need to have the first paragraph talking about your philosophy about teaching. Why you like teaching, as Alaina explained, why you care about it, why you're passionate about it, and what are your plans, how you're going to integrate technology in your teaching. Then there are other things than only teaching courses. You can include mentorship, you can include teaching research in your teaching statement. And in the meantime, because you have another year, look for any local universities, then offer them any professors that overlap with your research expertise to go and give every instructor would love to have such thing, because then they can save time. So offer this, and you can add lines in your CV about teaching experience that you were a guest lecturer in this and the other course.
I can actually also add to that there are a number of opportunities. There are kind of courses on kind of pedagogy that you can actually apply to. They're kind of like conferences, and also other institutes might offer courses on pedagogy, which they can really help you develop the teaching philosophy side. And because they're kind of courses, you can apply to go to them. Some of them are like residential courses, and then they can really give you as well, help teach you about how to teach, and those can be seen very favorably as well as something that doesn't necessarily require the actual going to a university if there's not one available.
Great, and this is Zach here. So I've actually worked in national labs in the past, not directly as opposed to I was there as a graduate student. But one thing I would suggest you doing is, it depends on which national lab you're actually joining. But there are a lot of students at national labs, and there's opportunities to actually mentor these students directly. And so maybe it's not necessarily teaching experience, but it's mentoring experience that you can gain at the national lab. And I would suggest reaching out to some of the departments within the national lab and really trying to find ways that you could, mentor students such that you could get, that experience. And it can also help your research in many cases. So that's my suggestion there. Anybody else have anything else to add?
I would say that I would agree with all of the team here. And, just because you lacked a specific experience in the past does not mean that you can't get an opportunity to do it in the future, and that you can't take what you've learned in other corners of the scientific and engineering ecosystem and share how that would help you be a better X in the future. So in this case, a better teacher. And, taking advantage of resources that you have within your institution, like the opportunity to mentor colleagues or students, either formally or informally, demonstrates to me as a search committee member, when you're writing that yeah, okay, of course, in a lab, like in a national lab, you aren't developing curriculum, but you have always had, there's this thread that weaves throughout your entire career. You've always had this great interest in teaching and mentoring, as evidenced by the fact that you have proactively sought out students or colleagues or early career professionals to mentor. And that's the kind of thing that you would do for my institution.
Great, thank you so much, Alaina. Another question that came from Ahmed. Oh, do you have another thing to add?
So I'll just add one last thing, which is something that I've heard speaking to a lot of faculty from a range of different schools, is that they were faculty, I've spoken to various people, and one thing they have said is schools know if you don't have a lot of teaching experience, they are universities. Everyone there does a lot of teaching, and they can teach you how to teach better. One thing they can't teach you, because it's your own research, is how to research better. So often schools would rather, they might have to put a bit more work into teaching. They can teach you how to teach, whereas, they're not going to expect to be able to improve your own personal research, because that's kind of what you have to do.
That's a great point. Thank you so much. So Ahmed had a follow-up question actually with regards to this. So he asks, is it important to have a strong strong social media presence via like LinkedIn or Twitter to improve chances for landing a faculty job, and how important is the social media presence?
So I can start with that. That's a great question, and thanks for asking that. Excuse me. More and more, we're seeing academic job ecosystems rely on social media. It may not be the final product, or it may not be the final resource that they use to invite people to apply or to they certainly are not using it to make hiring decisions, but they're using it to make interviewing decisions or inviting people to consider applying. But it's certainly not the only thing that they use, right? A lot of search committees rely on their own networks to invite people. But what we are seeing is that your presence on LinkedIn, for example, having a LinkedIn profile is a requirement these days, because search committees, particularly if they're looking for somebody with a very, very specific area of material science and engineering, like for example, topological acoustics. If I am looking for somebody who has that knowledge, there might not be somebody that I personally have interacted with in that region, in that space. And so to be able to do, I certainly will do a literature search in it, but I might also do a LinkedIn search for topological acoustics and material science, or topological acoustics and mathematics, to see who is out there. So your LinkedIn profile is your living, dynamic version of your CV, and it is very relevant, and I think it's going to become even more relevant and more important in the future for you to be known in the community and to help you advance your reputation in the community, so search committees think of you and also find you when they're doing searches on LinkedIn, and also Google searches as well. The other social media profile sites, for example, Twitter's useful to establish yourself as an authority in the community, but I don't at this point know of any search committees that are doing Twitter searches to find people to invite them to apply.
Great. Does anyone have anything else to add?
So I'll add a piece of advice I've been given. Is develop a website. I developed a website specifically for applying for jobs. It is something that you will be expected to have when you're a faculty member, because it's where students look, and it also gives you an opportunity to, at very least, if nothing else, it's a nice place that people can go and get links to all your papers. But hopefully it could be more than that. If you have things like you've given presentations and they've been recorded, then people can go and look at you actually presenting your work if they're interested, and it just gives them another metric to judge you by, and another place kind of to market yourself.
It's more data. It's more data about what your outputs are, right?
Yep.
What a great idea. Love that.
Yeah, 100% I agree with Thomas. Developing a website, it does not these days require any skill, and you can use WebEx or other tools to develop it, and it takes a few days, but it will show that you have plans for your research group in the future. So it is very important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think having a website, LinkedIn profile at the bare minimum, will help you gain exposure, while you're applying for all these different faculty positions.
Don't forget to list all your publications, list your presentations. I love that idea of linking videos. If you've appeared in media, you list out those links too. It also becomes a larger, more dynamic version of your CV too. It's a wonderful portfolio product.
Yeah. So our next question comes from Michael, and he asks, when highlighting the soft business skills that were mentioned, would you recommend listing skills you think you have, or describing projects or experiences you have had that are demonstrative of the mentioned skills? And he says the trade-off would be lengthy / readable on like cover letters or CVs.
Right. What a great question. Thank you so much for asking that one. And I'm smiling as I'm answering that because the answer to that is yes, no, and both. So what I mean by that is this. First of all, remember, CVs and job applications are art. They are not a science. Everyone looks different than the other one. Every person will communicate themselves in a different way. That's number one. Number two, your question about should you list out skills that you think you have versus skills that you know you have or that that are potentially aligned with the institution. When you are applying for a job, whether it's an academic job or not, any of your marketing materials, your CV, your cover letter, your resume, your research statement, even when you're doing your interview, all of these things, you are only telling the truth and you're not embellishing. So if you have experience with X-ray crystallography, then that is a skill that you have and that you can list. There is evidence that you have that skill. You can list that under skills. And then when you're describing under your research experience in your CV, remember I said you could double dip. When you're describing a project that you worked on where you used that technique, you can actually list it. You can describe how you used it. And so what happens is you actually list out the skills that you have, and then in the problems solution results section, I start to see, she has the skill. This is how she used this skill to solve this problem. So I see it in both places. So it's totally fine to do it that way, but you do only want to list out things that you have, not things that you want to have or wish you had based on what the job ad says. You also need to adjust what you are knowledgeable about and provide a fair representation of yourself on your document. For example, when I studied abroad in Cairo, by the time I got back from Egypt, I actually was fluent in Arabic, and then I did a number of other years of study of the language, and I ended up doing 4 years of Arabic plus a year in graduate school of Arabic. So I was absolutely fluent in Arabic. But that was 100,000 years ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And so me listing that I speak Arabic on my resume would not be a fair representation of my skill set. So I actually took it off my resume. I have it on my master CV on my home document to remind myself that I studied it with the years that I was fluent, but I don't list it anymore because it's not true. I am not fluent in Arabic anymore. So the same thing goes with any other skills that you develop, and that's related to those soft skills that you mentioned. So if you have led a team in your research group, even if it's a team of 2 people, you and a student, you and an undergraduate student, you have leadership experience. If you don't feel comfortable, and this is another important point, if you don't feel comfortable listing out that you have leadership experience, I would beg to differ with you, but if you don't feel comfortable with it, then don't list it because it's your document, not mine, and ultimately you make the choice of what goes on there. So in terms of those soft skills and those business skills, you can do yourself a favor now by starting to list out the different technical problems that you solved and the different experiences you had, and what were some of the business skills that you gained from those experiences. When you had your accomplishment, for example, you wrote a paper that was a first author paper, that demonstrates that you have excellent written communications. So that's a truthful statement because there's a record of it. There's proof that you actually wrote a paper that was published. So that shows me that you have this excellent written communication skills. So you can list out the experiences, try to correlate them with soft and business skills that from the list that I gave you. And when you feel comfortable, you can start to list those skills on your documents and communicate those skills in your other aspects, in your other parts of your application packet.
Great. Does anyone else have anything else to add?
Nope.
Okay, so our next question comes from Charles, and he asks, are there particular considerations in regard to marketing oneself for theorists whose research touch upon many fundamental problems but may not be exactly sexy?
Oh, I love it. Can I answer that question before the other team does?
Yeah.
So can
Sure.
I just say, can I just say that theorists, I got to say this, theorists are just as sexy as experimentalists, and theory is just as sexy as experimental science. And I myself, being a mathematics major, like my focus was pure theory. I mean, I was doing topology, studying the formula that describes donuts and coffee cups. I mean, that's super theoretical. And I love theoretical science, and I've been working with theoretical physicists and theoretical mathematicians for years. So I appreciate the sexiness of theory as well as the sexiness of experimental science and engineering. So how do you communicate that hook, that excitement? It's literally the same way. I mean, obviously you don't have a lab, you have a pencil and a brain and a computer. I get it. I mean, that's a little bit of a joke, but probably not that big of a joke, but probably not that big of a stretch either. But you are working on problems that are important to your field, and these problems may not necessarily have ramifications associated with metamaterials and with medical devices and with products that are used by consumers and other types of customers outside of the lab at the moment. It may be very early, it may be frontier science that you're working on, but it still does have potentiality to advance our knowledge of the universe, advance our knowledge of the community, of the system that we see and potentially don't see in front of us. And so I don't want you to sell yourself short as a theorist when you are communicating your value. Just still describe problem, solution, result. Problem, solution, result. It's the same way. So that's what I wanted to share.
All right, I want to add more, and then I have to leave because I'm giving a seminar at 3:30, so only 10 minutes to walk. So I think it doesn't matter. You're not publishing, in a, say, Nature journal to be looking for a 60. You're applying for a department, you're applying for a faculty, and everyone's looking to hire someone with the fundamental knowledge. So all you need to do is to present that you have the fundamental knowledge, and then having this multidisciplinary work that you're talking about, that you can collaborate with many people. It is more, even to me, it is sexier for a faculty, because then they know that when you go to their department, you can collaborate, you can work with other faculty. This is what everyone is looking for in hiring. So all you need to do is to present yourself in a way that, yes, you're working on fundamental, but these are the future outcomes in a very, very short area. Even in your presentation, in one slide, you always need to present, okay, here are the potential applications, and here are the areas outside our department, outside my field, that I can collaborate with and expand. So you need to focus on this multidisciplinary work of yours. And then, since I have to leave, there's another follow-up question about how you can convince the committee from other departments. When you have the knowledge, they don't care whether you are from physics or you're from mechanical engineering. They will hire you. I have a background in material science, and I'm in a mechanical engineering and energy department. So it's because I had the skills that they were looking for this hire. It doesn't matter. It is all the point of what they're looking for that specific hire. If that fits your area, it doesn't matter whether it is MSc or mechanical, you can apply and present and adjust your cover letter, as been discussed, for that specific hire. Then I'm sure you can get the long list, at least the phone interview, and continue from there.
Great point.
I have to leave now.
Thank you, Babak.
So,
I think we have time for one more question, Zach.
Yeah, so I guess so that we can address one of the poster related questions. So the main question that was asked, I would say, was like, how would one design such a poster to communicate their skill sets in this poster session? So I can start off the conversation by discussing kind of what would be expected here. So in this poster session, we don't expect you to really give a poster that's traditional for like an MRS meeting. It's one for you to really highlight your skill sets, and then also highlight, what you would be able to bring to a department. And so it wouldn't be typically showing like like a traditional research poster where you're showing a lot of graphs and then showing a lot of text of conclusions. It's more about what kind of skill sets you have. And probably the best way to design such a poster is to use a lot of didactic, schematics or didactic, graphics that can really showcase what your skill sets are and what you can really bring to a department. In this sort of poster session, it's more to of a conversation in your elevator pitch of what you're going to be giving to these search committees, and you'll use your poster kind of to illustrate your pitch. So we don't want it to basically be a representation of your CV, but rather didactic illustrations that really show what your skill sets are and what you really could take to any of these other programs that are hiring. Does anyone else want to add to this?
Well, and it's all about. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would think about it's going to be a poster of concepts. So think of the figures you see in a lot of papers where you have a figure 1 which sells the concept of that they're going to sell in this paper, and this is going to be your poster, because it's going to be broader. It's not going to be it's not going to be specific research or specific teaching, but it's going to be these broad kind of more schematic types of things.
And it's going to be focused on what it is that you could do for a department and why you would want to work with a department, what your research and teaching experience and philosophy is and has been. Yes. Zach, I noticed that somebody had asked a question also about the deadline to submit an abstract. Could you talk about that, please?
Yeah, so in terms of the deadline, so it did close on the 15th, but if you send your abstract today to ecp.mrs@gmail.com, which is also on the Google form, we can still consider your abstract. Because we already received over 100, we have limited space. We can't guarantee you that all the folks submitting their abstracts and applications late will be accepted, but we can certainly consider it. So please, if you have, if you really want to attend to the poster session and also be considered, please get that in as soon as possible. And again, the email is ecp.mrs@gmail.com.
And I saw that a couple of people have already emailed me to ask for the template, and I just want to remind you, and here's my contact information at the end of this presentation. You are welcome to email me, alaina@alainalevine.com. Just ask for the template. Don't have to write me a long email, and I'll send you that CV template and that resume template. And then also, I'd recommend that you not only do the My MRS to get career information from MRS, but also connect with me on LinkedIn, because that's the way I communicate all the different career resources that I'm providing, free career resources, articles, webinars that I'm providing for the community. And in fact, I'm very excited that I'm going to be giving 2 more webinars for MRS in the next couple of weeks, one on entrepreneurship careers, and one is another panel with colleagues where we're going to be talking about multiple career paths in material science and engineering. So I'll be announcing those on LinkedIn, and of course, they're on MRS's website as well. So with that, I want to thank the team. You guys were great. Thank you so much. And I want to thank the audience. You guys were great. Thank you so much. And I want to thank MRS. You guys were great. Thank you so much. I am so excited about all of y'all. I have to say that because I'm in Tucson, Arizona. I'm so excited about all y'all's career adventures that you have ahead of you. No need to wish you good luck because you don't need it. But I wish you the very best, and I can't wait to see what faculty position you choose to take when the offers come rolling in. Thank you so much, everyone. This concludes our webinar for today, and it is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it again later to laugh at my jokes. Thank you.